Good morning, Gathering Network kids. Welcome to Kids Zone today. I am so thankful to get to be with you here this morning. Now, we are continuing to prepare for Easter, which will happen in a few weeks. And last week, we talked about God's big agape love for us, for you, for me, for all people. And we talked about how the Bible is one big story of God's love for all of his creation, both creatures and animals and bugs, big and small, and all the humans on the earth. We talked about how God gives us a choice. He gives us freedom to choose to get to know him and love him and have a relationship with him. And we talked about how God's love for us is perfect, like the love described in 1 Corinthians 13. Now, it can be tricky to really understand why God would give us a choice to love him. In fact, lots of things about God can be so confusing. As we continue to prepare for Easter, there is a lot for us to understand in why we are celebrating Jesus' resurrection. Today, I want to talk about the idea of sin. But in order to understand sin, we have to understand what it was God wanted the most from the people he created. In Deuteronomy 6, which is in the Old Testament in the Bible, it tells us that the greatest commandment was for God's people to love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your mind. This was God's greatest goal for his people. From the beginning, God wanted to have a close and caring relationship with us. But humans are always looking to solve things or solve their problems in their own way. God's people really struggled to do this well, and it was really hard for them to remember what the number one goal was. And they kept getting distracted by trying to do things their own way, which usually meant not loving God or other people with all their heart, with all their soul, and with all their mind. This is what we call sin. Sin means that we are missing the goal God has for us of loving him with our heart, soul, and mind, and missing the goal of loving other people the way God does. Like a target for a bow and arrow or for a dartboard, to hit the center is to hit the goal, right? To be honest, this goal is hard for us to meet, and for thousands of years, people have been living in the way that they think is best. Lots of stories in the Bible show us that people thought, you know what? We're not going to wait on God. We're not going to do it the way he told us to do it. We're going to do it ourselves, our way. And the thing is, our way usually hurts God and others, and usually ourselves. Sin actually ends up making our lives worse. God knew that hitting the goal, hitting the target of loving him and loving others would always be hard for us to do. We would never be able to do that perfectly. So he chose to send his son Jesus to come to earth as a baby and grow into a man who would live the way that God was asking us to. Jesus told us in Matthew 22, he repeats what God said in Deuteronomy. He says that the greatest commandments God had given is for us to love the Lord our God with all our heart, our soul, and our mind. And second is to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus showed us what God was like and what he cared about. which is the greatest gift that God could give us. Jesus himself was sinless, meaning he knew how to live in order to love God with his heart, soul, and mind, and he knew how to love people as he loved himself. Now, this isn't the end of the story yet. We know that God loves us so much. We know that he gives us a choice to love him back and have a relationship with him. We know that we struggle to love him and other people in the way that he wants us to. We know that we have Jesus who lived here on earth to show us the goal of loving God and loving other people. But if sin is very much a part of our life, what else is to be done about it? Is it enough to just know about it, or is there something else that needs to happen? Next week, we're going to talk about Jesus' death and resurrection and how Jesus is actually the one who pays the price for our sin and makes a way for us to have a peaceful and loving relationship with God for the rest of our lives. Take some time this morning to talk about the discussion questions, and I want to make sure you guys know that any questions you have are good questions when it comes to understanding God and Jesus and their love for us and sin and the cross and Jesus' death and resurrection. It can stir up so many questions for us, and we don't always have perfect answers for those questions, but I want to make sure you know that you can ask any question that you have. I love you guys, I miss you guys, and I will see you next week.